Hello, and welcome to another edition of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you haven't seen the show before, this is a chance for one of the members of the lore team to sit down, give you a personal tour of one of the systems that will be appearing in Star Citizen or potentially Squadron 42. We'll give you a little insight to the astronomy that went into creating the system, and a little bit about the history of where it is and how it exists in the world, and all that fun stuff. Now, this time around, we're going to be visiting a system that's always been shrouded in controversy. Well, technically it started more as having a lot of kind of like political government secrecy around it, which then evolved into controversy. So today we're going to go off to the system of Chronos. Now, to help visualize this journey, we're going to use the handy star map, which we have here centered on Earth. We're going to go to the search bar, and let's head on out to Chronos. Now, Chronos is from Earth. All the jumps, I believe I looked at it yesterday, it would be, if you're taking a large jump points only, it'll take you about 12 jumps to get to Chronos, which is a bit of a trip. Let me back out here and just show you where it is, because it is off on the fringes of the UEE. And that's one of the reasons why, after this system was discovered in 2863, people wondered why in the world the UEE would even want to hold on to it. Now, as you can see here, I turned on the large jump points, and it shows you it's connected to Kellogg, and this is where the system was discovered from in 2863, reportedly by the 18th Battle Fleet. Now, just so you know, that discovery is in dispute in a court case that's currently going through the UEE legal system. There's a lawsuit by the family of Contrali, is the last name of the family, who credits their grandfather with actually discovering the system from Kellogg and actually submitting official paperwork to say such, but the UEE government kind of covering it up and using the fact that Contrali basically had a number of warrants out for his arrest for basically poaching orms, which are a kind of like sentient species that do live in Kellogg too. And the fact that he was basically a wanted criminal at the time, that the UEE has denied him and his family the right to be the rightful kind of discoverers of this system. Now, for those that are familiar with Kellogg, not only is it protected planets there because of the kind of like sentient species that are on one of the planets, it's also home to Quarterdeck, which is the massive UEE prison that's there. So there's really not a lot of reasons to go to Kellogg in the first place, which made it interesting why, even though it's connected, Chronos is connected to it, that the UEE would hold on to it. There's one other jump point that connects Chronos, and it goes to Branagh, which is an unclaimed system that's just sitting out here. So as you see, if I grab the star mat and kind of move it around, you've got, it's out here in the middle of nowhere. It's not really connected to anything. So what about the system made the UEE so interested in it? Well, let's go in and take a look at it right now. As you'll first see is that the sun is a G3V type main sequence star. It's yellow-white, and it's very similar to the sun that's in the center of the Sol system. So that was one of the appealing things to start off with, is that it looks very similar. It has a very similar mass and luminosity as what we have in Sol. So there was a general familiarity with it. The first thing that is kind of close to it, as you'll notice, is that the two planets that are in the system are really close to the star. They're actually inside the green line here. The first one is Bruder. This is a rocky mesoplanet, and this is only about 0.3 AU away from the sun. It does have a lot of metallic ores in the planet's surface, but being only 0.3 AU away from the sun means that the surface temperatures are extreme and basically make any mining operations there virtually impossible. Now, the second planet in the system, as we spin this way, is Schwester, right here. And this is a little further away. It's about 0.5 AU away, but it's actually warmer than Brooder because there are a lot of gases that in a very thick atmosphere here, which trap the heat from the sun and basically build up a greenhouse gas effect on the planet that makes it even more inhospitable to humanity than Brooder. So why keep it? Why, if this system upon discovery had a sun like this, 2 planets very close to the center of the system, and that it? There were conspiracy theories about exactly why for years and years and years. Some, believed that they would track these military shipments and haulers going in and out of the system from Kellogg. Some assumed that they were working on some kind of secret doomsday device. Others, more creatively, maybe suggested some kind of invisible space station. It ran the gamut of possibilities and even drove one conspiracy theorist to actually stow away aboard one of these kind of like ships that were taking supplies into the system. She went in, she came back out, and she basically announced that she hadn't seen anything. There was nothing there that seemed out of the ordinary. It just seemed like another system that they were making a run to back and forth. Now, of course, the conspiracy theory circles thought that this meant that they'd gotten to her and that there was something very, very big and dramatic there that the UEE was hiding and that they had to basically, cover up. It only intensified the conspiracy theories, even though there was literally not a shred of evidence that anything really crazy was going there. Eventually, in 2872, the Imperator Corbin Salehi sat down and explained exactly why the UEE had decided to hold on to the system. And as we back up the map here, I finally can bring it into view what we had decided to do here. And that is basically create a world from scratch. The project was known as Project Archangel, and the world is, as you'll know, is Synth World, which is right here. It's this representation of it is just a first pass. It's literally being constructed and put together right now. But this system, where there were 2 planets, and the inner part where there would be no population, there would be no industry going on there, seemed like a perfect test ground to try this very, very kind of ambitious project because it wouldn't be disturbing any local inhabitants. It wouldn't be impeding on any economic value that the system would provide. It had a star at the center, which we were familiar with and could deal with. And being able to have this vast expanse past Vester to be able to find the exact right point to be able to build this planet kind of seemed to make sense for Imperator Salehi and this project. Now, Project Archangel came about because of something called the Clark Committee. And the Clark Committee was kind of brought together after the downfall of the Messers and the massacre of Garentu, where an entire kind of like planet's ecosystem was wiped away by terraforming just so humanity could economically take advantage of it. And humanity realized the UE had a bad reputation with the Banu and the Xi'an for the way that they handled themselves. So they wanted to try to think of very ambitious, positive projects that they could focus on. The most extreme, basically, proposal that the Clark Committee put out there was creating our own world. That way, we don't need to terraform anything anymore. We can literally just build a world, populate it, to our specifications, and it would solve those problems. When this plan first came forward, it was seen as extreme and crazy, but Imperator Salehi was absolutely convincing. He had kind of rose to the Imperatorship on a wave of positive, kind of open and ambitious government. People at the time were sick of the, kind of like getting over the Messers. They were sick of this entrenched corruption that was still a part of the system. And he kind of countered that message, came in, brought this kind of like positive message with him, and basically convinced the political and the public that this would be a worthwhile project. Now, for years, this project did go on with the full support of the UEE and the population. Haulers were more than willing to bring shipments to this like far corner of the galaxy for not a lot of profit, because they know it was going to some greater good and some greater purpose. As the decades wore on and the synth world was still being constructed and billions upon billions and billions of credits being spent on it, the appetite for it kind of lessened a little bit. This was really kind of like, it really hit a turning point in 2922 when Corbin Salahi, who was no longer Imperator at the time, had kind of like moved on with his life, was still the main advocate for the synth world. He ended up dying unexpectedly due to complications to his artificial pancreas. Now, when the synth world's biggest cheerleader passed away, all of a sudden the positivity and the idea that this could be something humanity could achieve kind of wilted at the same time. What happened shortly thereafter in 2925 made things even worse. Basically, Schwester here, with the greenhouse gases, the part of the Synth World project were to put refineries and different ore stations on this planet to help trap the gases and use them in the construction of Synth World. So when an independent auditor went to Schwester to look at these refineries, they discovered they weren't there. One of the project managers, Ellie Canis, basically had skimmed billions of dollars of credits off the project and just never built the refineries on Schwester. Now, what happened to that is the Terra Gazette and other papers that were against the massive government spending on the synth world splashed headlines across their front pages showing how many credits had been wasted on this basically embezzlement plot. And for the first time, the citizens and civilians of the Empire finally got an idea of exactly how much money was being spent to create a planet that didn't really seem to be coming together as fast as they had hoped or had been promised. This is when basically a lot of the kickback to the synth world started to go into high gear. For those who are interested in the political breakdowns of the current UEE, one of the parties is called the Transitionalist. Their center is in Terra. They believe that Terra should be the center of humanity and the center of the UEE going forward, that Terra has always been on the forefront of where humanity needs to go. They are firmly against spending more money on the synth world. They have called it something akin to a financial vampire on the Empire, and part of the reason why the UEE in 2947 faces so many looming budgetary crises is because of the money being spent on this. In fact, last year, Rachel Lester, who is a Transitionalist Party member who's in the Senate as a representative from Van in Croatia, actually put forward a sensible Synth World amendment, which would basically take the funding for the Synth World is mandatory in the UEE budget. The sensible Synth World amendment would have made it discretionary, meaning every single year it would have had to face, it would have been on the chopping block and would have been up for vote as to whether we keep funding this project or not. So there is some heavy opposition growing stronger every day within even the halls of the Senate and other parts of the UEE government, that this ambitious Synth World project, which was meant to show what humanity could achieve when we came together and focused on the good of a side of things, to basically put that by the wayside. Now you'll notice here the Synth World orbiting it is Archangel Station. Now this is basically the main hub for the Synth World. This is where the researchers, this is where the people who are building it, this is where they're stationed. This is where, if you're going to bring in a bunch of ore or minerals or something to help the project, this is where you're going to be dropping it off. Visiting Synth World right now while under construction is, well, the 18th Battle Fleet, which still patrols this system and is based at Archangel Station, would not take to that kindly. So this is where you're going to want to go to drop off, look for missions, drop off anything you're hauling into the system for them. It is also, besides being the home to the 18th Battle Fleet, it is also home to the 999 Test Squadron, which, if you are familiar with the history of that, has been around since the earliest days of human space travel. This goes way back to even before there was a Navy that patrolled the skies. These goes back to some of the people that tested the very first spaceships for humanity that were able to go and visit the deep corners of the Sol system and test a lot of the experimental spaceships that would eventually then become commonplace thanks to their testing of their components and stuff like that. So the 999 Test Squadron, also known as the Reckless, Reckless with a W, W-R-E-C-K-L-E-S-S. They're all about making sure that when they do test these ships and new components, that they don't wreck. They're very dedicated to staying safe and secure. But with this vast expanse of space out here on the outer reaches of the system, it is the perfect location for a test squadron to be based, so they can have all this surrounding space to test different ships and stuff like that with a minimal interference from the public or anything else. The 99th Test Squadron is a fascinating story, but that is a story for another time, one which you can also find on the RSI website amongst our other lore posts and stuff like that. So that is the Chronos system for you to get to know a little bit. Again, nothing too crazy except for the fact that we're trying to build a planet there. So yeah, thank you for watching this episode of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.